The Minnesota Vikings had a memorable 2024 season, but now it is back to the drawing board as they fell short once again of hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. My name is Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we are doing our first ever mock free agency for the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to break it down for you here in a second, but before we do that, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tackle that bell, and while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Vikings do this free agency. Ryan, that being said, let's pull up the Vikings free agency list here. And the Vikings, they only have 4 picks as of right now when it comes to the 2024 NFL draft, but luckily they have about 63 million in cap space. They have a lot of big names here, actually, that some of these guys are going to get paid either with the Vikings or elsewhere. And so Sam Darnold, Byron Murphy, Cam Robinson, Cameron Bynum, Stephon Gilmore, Aaron Jones, and shoot, I'll even include Daniel Jones as well. Some really big names here overall for honestly just an amazing season in Vikings history. And so a lot of these names are going to be talked about a lot in this free agency. Ryan, we're going to talk about this here in a second, but which one
Yeah.
of some of the other names here do you think have a good chance of potentially staying with the Vikings?
I think Shaq Griffin has a chance. After that, it's a lot of rotational kind of backup guys. I think Jerry Tillery might be like on the training camp roster, but maybe not. Maybe won't make
Yeah,
like the 53. Like there's a lot of those guys. You have David Quisenberry. I think that was another guy that got some playing time that could potentially return again and be on the training camp roster, but not on
exactly.
the 53 man roster. So I do think it'll be interesting to kind of see. This is definitely one of the more intriguing spots to watch this offseason because it hasn't been, apparently, according to Ian Rappaport, who's usually right about these things, it hasn't been decided in Minnesota whether or not they're going to bring Sam Darnold back or not. And the fact that it's even really a conversation, I think, is interesting just because they did draft JJ McCarthy at 11 overall this past season, or 10 overall. And like you would think that that would be the guy that they would want to go with, but obviously Sam Darnold had a very successful season this in 2024. They also did bring in Daniel Jones, and so reports are that if Sam Darnold does not come back, that they will potentially re-sign Daniel Jones to a contract to be kind of the veteran in the room. And so I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see what they do. And with that being said, let's kind of get into some of the offseason moves. So before we started making some of these moves, the Vikings had about 63 million in total cap space. You can see right now they're just under 39, but we have already done a couple steps. So the first step here is we're going to go through and we're going to clear up some cap space. So the first thing that we did was we released Josh Oliver and Garrett Bradbury, cleared up about what is that, 9 million in free
Mhm.
agency there. So bringing the total to about 71 million. And those guys, I just think that money can be allocated elsewhere. Maybe these guys get brought back on smaller contracts or what. But I do think that those are guys that could potentially be moved on from there.
Yeah. Yeah, especially too. I mean, you have TJ Hawkinson. I mean, Josh Oliver is used a lot, but if you're trying to clear up some space, because you got several players that you're going to have to pay here, and so I think you can go find a tight end with similar skill sets for less money, or similar to what you said, bring him back for a lesser deal with lesser cap. And same thing could be applied for Garrett Bradbury as well. And so I think his cap hit is about 6 million overall, and Josh Oliver's is 9 million before being cut. And so for both of those guys, that's $15 million going to those guys. And I think even to what you'll see here, I think there's going to be an upgrade at the center position from Garrett Bradbury. But so with that though, there's a couple other routes they maybe could end up going. There's some other lower level guys like down to the bottom that are more rotational players that we did end up bothering with. And so kind of heading straight into some of the additional internals, if we want to scroll down a little bit more, Byron Murphy's one of the top corners in the league, and he's about to get paid here. And so we ended up making it about 19.9 million, or essentially just 20 million in cap space. He might even get a little bit more. So I have to kind of wait and see how that transpires. But he's one of the top corners in the league. He's definitely going to get paid, and the Vikings are going to want to keep him. They are going to move on from Stephon Gilmore, who's going to hit free agency, and that makes sense as well. There's a couple other guys that we ended up deciding to keep in free agency, such as Shaq Griffin as well. But we did end up also signing Cameron Bynum also though too. And we got mixed signals on how much he is due for free agency. Spot Track has Cameron Bynum at 17 million, and good for him if he gets that contract. But I don't think that really is going to be the case overall. Vikings fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but so we ended up settling more on 7 million in that capacity. Ended up
Yeah.
keeping him as well over some of the other secondary guys with the potential of Harrison Smith retiring. So that I know that is still up in the air as well. So I have to kind of wait and see how that ends up transpiring as well.
Yeah, and that's $17 million a year for Cameron Bynum, which is something that, like, the top safeties in the league are making. I do think is a little steep, especially for somebody that hasn't made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro.
Mhm.
And so that doesn't mean he's not a really good player, and maybe he gets a bigger contract than this, but that $17 million range might be a little bit pricey, I think, for him. We did bring back Daniel Jones, so we did not sign Sam Darnold to an extension. I think he's more than likely going to get $40+ million from somewhere else, and I think that the Vikings will not say good riddance, but they will say thank you and good luck. And I do think that Daniel Jones coming back, kind of the veteran standard right now is about $8 million for like a 1 year deal. So bring him back on a 1 year, $8 million deal, get to work under Kevin O'Connell, and then potentially go out and have a career resurgence like a Baker Mayfield, a Jared Goff type of situation. And then we re-signed Dalton Reisner there just to kind of keep that interior solidified. So that is
Yeah.
all the internal free agency moves that we made. And so, like, do you want to jump over into external free agents?
Yeah, I think real quick, it's just with Daniel Jones. I'd be very curious to see. I mean, Kevin O'Connell seems to be kind of the quarterback whisperer, and like how he can run these offenses and what he's done with Kirk Cousins, what he did with Sam Darnold, and yes, it helps when you have Justin Jefferson, and maybe that's what Daniel Jones was missing was a Justin Jefferson in New York. And so, but I do think just keeping him there, I do still think that there's some value with Daniel Jones and just having a veteran backup quarterback there. Dalton Risner, then too, moving on to him, he is one of the top just rated guards in the league. So to what you said, you can get him at a very affordable deal for his cap space overall, and try to keep that interior as intact as possible. But I think you're about to improve on the interior as well, as probably the top center hitting free agency is going to be Drew Dalman from my Atlanta Falcons. Falcons might end up having to let him walk depending on our cap situation, and although I think he could. Like the Falcons could improve on him, but I think it is definitely an improvement for the Vikings over Garrett Bradbury as well. So signing him to that making me have to do math there.
4 year, 30 million.
4 year, 30 millions. Yeah. So 7.5 million each year. We'll have to see what bonuses or prorate or what his overall cap space might be. But I think that's an instant upgrade in that center position as well, while trying to protect your number 10 overall draft pick from the 2024 NFL draft. You're going to want to have as top of an offensive line as you possibly can. And they're going to be set at tackles with Christian Darrisaw and then Brian O'Neill. And so now you've solidified Dalton Risner as well. Now you bring in Drew Dalman at center. Maybe that could be a spot they focus on in the draft, is trying to maybe find left guard or maybe in some other form or fashion throughout free agency. But I think getting as big of an offensive line, or as solid of an offensive line as possible, is a huge priority for this Vikings team, especially in free agency since they have such little draft capital.
Yeah, and I do think too, you bring back Dalton Reisner, now you add Drew Dalman. That's a top offensive line. I think you're going to have a much better running game in that, just because of that offensive line. And so with a better run blocking offensive line, you're going to need a better running back. Aaron Jones was fine last year, but he is over 30 now. And I do think getting a younger replacement for him in free agency is going to be solid. They probably will also address the running back position in the draft just because of the depth that is there. But Javonte Williams, he is only 25 years old. He's a really solid running back, but I think you give him like a 2 year, $12 million deal just to kind of come in, be at worst case, a high end third down kind of receiving back. But I just think that is a good signing. You get a good football player to kind of go behind a revamped offensive line, and I think your quarterback will thank you for it later.
Exactly. Yeah. No. It's you have Aaron Jones. We talked about it. This honestly doesn't even stop you from maybe even re-signing Aaron Jones, and you have a very unique running back duo there in Minnesota. I think that would be interesting, and then you could still go and maybe with one of your later picks, one of the few picks that you have, still go get a running back for the future. Maybe can go and develop it. The running back
Mhm.
position is very unique for the Vikings here because I almost feel like with the just with their draft capital, I feel like it's almost boom or bust. Be like that first pick, go get the top running like Omari and Hampton if he falls, or maybe if Ashton Genty falls, maybe you could just go and like just go like full out in this draft and go get Ashton Genty and then just set that running back position up for the future. But at the same time, though, to the running back position, we've seen undrafted rookies go have 1,000-yard seasons because there's an amazing offensive line in front of them. So how they end up managing the running back position and the running back room is going to be interesting just with how they're handcuffed with their draft capital, because that would be the preferred way this year is go get a young, exciting rookie running back behind a much improved offensive line. But we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
Javonte Williams would be a good addition to this Vikings offense.
Yeah, no, I think it would too. I do think at 24, like Omari and Hampton might be an interesting spot there. If they trade back into the second round, you have Travion Henderson, Quinshad Judkins, Caleb Johnson. Like the list goes on and on for top tier running backs in this draft class. So, last but not least, here we're gonna address the defensive line. Gonna go out and get DJ Jones, the big run stuffing defensive lineman there, I believe from Cincinnati. Is that right? Or am I
DJ
mistaken?
Jones, no,
Yeah,
Denver, another
Denver.
Broncos
Okay.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So go out and get DJ Jones. I think he would fit in really well in this aggressive Brian Flores defense. So you sign him to a 2-year, $11 million or 2-year, $22 million with $11 million on average annual value. I just think that's a good fit. Solidify this interior even more. You have two really good young pass rushers in Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner. And I just feel like going and solidifying that interior is the next solid move to make. So that kind of puts them in the high teens in terms of salary cap space. They don't need as much as other teams just because they only have 4 picks, but we are trying to leave some money available for them to go and sign their draft class, but give them some other flexibility to make kind of bottom of the roster moves. And so I do feel like that this is probably it in terms of like the large free agent additions that we'll make.
yeah, and so I think this is the best that they could do. My one thing then too as well going through this and you kind of kick this off to start. So this will be my final thoughts is I think going through this and go look at all the people who they did end up re-signing, both internally but also externally, is enough reason for me that like any potential talk that Minnesota is like they're still on the fence if Sam Darnold's going to be the guy is just not true because that what Sam Darnold would be going for, what we have seen in the past is
Mhm.
for quarterbacks in situations like this has been about 35 to 40 million dollars, maybe a little less, maybe a little more depending on the situation there, and that would be a vast majority of the cap space that they have left. So they wouldn't be able to re-sign Byron
Yeah.
Murphy or Cameron Vine. Wouldn't even be able to have a conversation really about uh, Cam Robinson or Stephon Gilmore either. If that's the route that they were want to go. Actually, also we said wouldn't even be a conversation about Byron Murphy. Like there's no way they could afford him unless
No.
they
Yeah.
and they could finagle the cap. Yes, like they could push money, maybe backload a lot of contracts. Have to kind of wait and see how they would end up doing that. But you drafted JJ McCarthy for a reason. Sam Darnold, as great of a year that he had, though, I think also too, it just wasn't meant to be, especially the final couple of weeks, kind of proving that as well. And so I think that you found a lot of good young talent. I think Kevin O'Connell once again showed how great of a coach he is. Trust him to coach up JJ McCarthy. This might be a tough season this year with a young rookie quarterback. That's why you want to really invest in the offensive line and the future of that offensive line. If you're able to go get a solid running back as well to have him back there, that's why I think potentially Aaron Jones re-signing might be very plausible. Have a veteran running back there with him to help protect him. Uh, and you have the best receiver in the league, and you arguably have the best receiving duo in the league just with how effective Jordan Addison is complementing Justin Jefferson. I don't think there's really a snowball's chance in hell that Sam Darnold comes back to Minnesota just looking at the finances. So
Yeah.
that's just me. I've been wrong before, rarely, but I have been wrong before. So we'll have to see if this happens again.
Yeah. And I do think that Minnesota, we had, I think, kind of, well, I say we loosely, because the entire sports media, I think, had kind of written them off coming into 2024, and they proved a lot of us wrong. And so I do feel like this team is they have a really good roster, they have a really good head coach, and I do look forward to kind of seeing what they do. With some of this young talent, I'm excited to see JJ McCarthy and see what he can do as long as he can stay healthy. And so I'm looking forward to this Minnesota Vikings team. I think they have a bright future ahead. And on that note, let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Vikings mock free agency. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.